President Muhammadu Buhari has set up an implementation committee for the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement with a mandate to ensure that Nigeria does not get it wrong in embracing the agreement. So, what should the government do to maximize the benefit of the agreement? My guest will be looking at that in this week's episode of the program. Happy New Year and welcome to the first edition of Dateline Abuja in the year. I'm Ibrahim Madra. The National Assembly has increased and passed the Federal Capital Territory Statutory Appropriation Bill of 278.78 billion naira for the 2020 fiscal year. We have details of that in the FCT in Focus segment. In the interview segment, a member of the Nigerian Economic Society speaks about the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is expected, by the way, to commence later this year. But first, here are the stories that made the headline within the week in the nation's capital. Effective from this quarter, the Nigerian military will be withdrawing from some parts of the country to enable civil authorities take over duties of ensuring security of lives and property. The Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Adoke Ibas, made the revelation after a meeting of the Security Council chaired by President Muhammadu Buhari.
With respect to the security situation in the country, it was generally agreed and noted that the security agencies have done their very best in ensuring that the deliverables are made clear. For those areas that we believe the military has been able to achieve the desired objectives, that the civil authority will be preparing to take back those responsibilities as the military draws back on its forces in those areas to enable it focus its attention on other emerging threats and areas of concern. Mr. President has directed that the Council and the members of armed forces ensure a peaceful society in 2020, and to that effect, we are more than determined to continue from where we stopped in 2019 and to ensure that we sustain our various operations to ensure a secure Nigeria for all of us.
The police in the Federal Capital Territory paraded 4 suspects over the failed bank robbery in the Mpape area of the nation's capital. The suspects gave account of their involvement, while a man suspected to be the mastermind of the robbery was arrested later. Police authorities say investigations are ongoing, as all the suspects will be charged to court upon completion of investigations. Abuja residents joined the rest of the world to welcome the new year. While some spent time in churches, some gathered at the Abuja countdown to witness the frenzy and fireworks that greeted the new year. In the meantime, President Muhammadu Buhari, in his New Year message to Nigerians, renewed hope for a better Nigeria, with the unveiling of major projects expected to come on stream nationwide within the year. In his letter to Nigerians, President Buhari says his government will complete 47 ongoing road projects, including those leading to the nation's ports, and major bridges, including substantial work on the second Niger Bridge. He also assured Nigerians that he will also complete 13 housing estates under the National Housing Project Plan. Meanwhile, President Buhari received a New Year card from the National Chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Comrade Adams Oshiomhole. Addressing State House correspondents afterwards, Comrade Oshiomhole described the President's New Year message as inspiring.
There was nothing wrong, and we are indeed happy with the New Year message to Nigerians, because the responsibility of every leadership is to inspire hope life is sustained and driven by hope. And the challenge of leadership is not to join the people to lament that things are terrible, to give up, and join the people in wallowing in self-pity. The responsibility of leadership is to inspire people, give them hope, and in this case, in line with the principle of accountability and democracy, democracy is not just about voting and everybody goes to sleep. It's about the leadership explaining periodically what he is doing, what he's going to do differently, and what he hopes to accomplish within a given time.
The primate of the Anglican Church, Most Reverend Nicholas Oko, believes that as a nation, Nigeria can overcome all its challenges if those in position of authority fear God and ensure justice for all. Most Reverend Oko made this point while delivering his New Year message.
For us as a nation, it's very important that the difficulties we are passing through as a country will only get better if we recognize the position of God in our lives. God is God of justice. God is God of fairness. Injustice and peace cannot work together. Justice and peace, they go together.
Justice Othman Musa of the Federal Capital Territory High Court has returned the case file of former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mr. Mohammed Adoke, to the Chief Judge of the FCT High Court, following the inability of the court to hear the bail application filed by the defendant. Meanwhile, the court has granted the application of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission to keep Mr. Adoke in its custody for additional 14 days, preparatory to his arraignment. The anti-graft agency is charging the former AGF to court for alleged abuse of office and money laundering. President Muhammadu Buhari met with the chairman of the Nigerian Diaspora Commission, Mrs. Adoke Dabiri-Erewa. Briefing State House correspondents after the meeting, she revealed that the federal government is planning to float a diaspora investment fund later in the year.
I've started the process of having a diaspora database to know exactly the number of Nigerians in diaspora as accurately as we can, where hopefully we'll have a diaspora policy to be rectified by the Federal Executive Council. And then we continue our engagements. We had the Nigeria Diaspora Investment Summit, which was very successful. We're planning the Nigeria Diaspora Trust Fund.
President Muhammadu Buhari also met with the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, who advised African leaders to invest the continent's $1.8 trillion pension and sovereign wealth assets of the development of infrastructure.
We have to also look at home first. Now, today in Africa, you have the size of the pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and pension funds, and insurance pool of funds on the continent. It's about $1.8 trillion, right? And so you can see if you have $1.8 trillion in pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and other insurance pool of funds, mutual funds that you have, absolutely, if we can just tap a little bit of that, we will close very quickly the infrastructure gap that we're talking about.
The Senate is insisting that the 37 billion naira voted for the renovation of the National Assembly complex in the budget is justified in view of the need for an urgent repair of the facility. However, the chairman of the Senate Committee on Media and Public Affairs, Senator Godiya Okwashiki, explained that the FCDA and not the National Assembly will handle the award of contracts for the renovation of the complex. Welcome back. The National Assembly increased the 2020 budget of the Federal Capital Territory Administration from 232 billion to 278 billion naira, a difference of 46 billion naira. The bill was passed following the consideration of a harmonized report of the Senate and House of Representatives committees on the FCT. Here are the details.
President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, moves to preside over a Senate Committee on Supply on the last legislative day for 2019. The Senate had received a report on the proposed budget for the Federal Capital Territory. The Federal Capital Territory Administration had proposed to spend 232 billion naira in 2020, but the Senate Committee on the FCT increased the figure to 278 billion naira.
Security, roads, water, health, education, and development of satellite towns within the territory.
While presenting the report, the chairman of the committee explains that the committee had identified critical areas of need to ensure improved living standards in the FCT, hence the increased budget.
The committees expanded on the proposed FCT 2020 revenue profile marginally in order to meet the demands for the funds in identified critical areas. The justification is based on the increase in the changes of some revenue variables, parameters like VAT, stamp duties, levies, and all other fees such as payment of premium on land, enhanced collection of water and sewage rates.
55.9 billion naira is recommended for personnel costs, while 62.34 billion naira is for overhead costs, and 160.13 billion naira is for capital expenditure. According to the bill, engineering services gets the highest capital vote with 59.9 billion naira. Next is the satellite town development with 36.5 billion naira, and transport department 9.4 billion naira.
The increase on infrastructural development, especially the satellite towns, because we need to really decongest the city center so that people can begin to own plots and even live in the satellite towns and come to work in the city center. Mr. President, I've also looked at the increase on health and engineering infrastructure.
The Committee on FCT should be very critical in monitoring the expenditure on the capital, because if we move around FCT, within the town, the central town, not at the marginals, you still have areas within the town where there is no infrastructure, whether it is street or even the other utilities. And these are, if you go to Otako, there are places where you don't have those utilities, roads, water, and even light. And so if they have this high capital expenditure, I think they should and must ensure that it is prudently spent on expenditure.
As the State Assembly of the FCT, we have discharged our responsibility. The next thing is for FCT to ensure that it implements the budget. So I will, on behalf of all of us, urge the FCT committee to be steadfast to ensure that what we have passed here is what is implemented. We will work together with the executive arm of government to ensure that we get those revenues that are supposed to fund the budget that we have passed.
2,208,545,857 carried.
In the House of Representatives, the Deputy Speaker presided over the Committee of Supply, where the report of the FCT budget was considered.
The House also in the Committee of Supply considered the report of the Committee on the Federal Capital Territory and Federal Capital Territory Area Councils and Auxiliary Matters on a bill for an act to authorize the issue for the Federal Capital Territory Administration Statutory Revenues Fund of the Federal Capital Territory Administration account the total sum of 278,355,365,940 naira, only of which the sum of 55,878,241,095 naira only is for personal costs.
The Senate and House of Representatives committees had harmonized the differences in the budget, and the implementation is following the January to December cycle.